The former COVID czar for New York City was caught on tape by YouTuber Steven Crowder admitting to flouting every rule he required New Yorkers to follow. In this hidden camera video, Dr. J.K. Varma, the official in charge of New York City's pandemic response, boasts about going to sex parties and dancing underneath a Wall Street bank during the height of the pandemic. Let's watch.
When there were shutdowns and restrictions, it seems like rules for thee, not for me, if you're having sex parties with people in hotels.
I think the idea with all of that was basically, again,
if you're having sex parties and dance parties with 200 people while people there get punished if there are 10 or more at a gathering, or more than 40, and you have a dance party of 500 people, that seems like, my question is, you obviously doing that.
Isn't that true with everything though in life?
No, not everyone's having sex parties when they encourage lockdowns for other people.
No, but there's a million rules.
If you weren't afraid of it, why those policies, my point. If you're afraid of it, you wouldn't be having sex parties and you wouldn't be having dance parties with 200 people when everyone else is locked down.
No, because I'm saying that it's not...
And not checking for vaccinations.
It's not individual.
Right?
No, those are totally different issues. I mean, I think
you know what I'm talking about.
What I'm trying to get at is the main issue is it's not about individual level risk. It's the same thing as driving.
But it is about you as a government official being the architect of the policy.
So those things are
having sex parties and having dance parties while businesses are being shut down. And New York sees an unemployment that's twice the national average as a result of policy.
During the time, I wasn't going to these dance parties in the first year and a half of COVID. I don't know what you're talking about.
You weren't having sex parties? And then dance parties?
No. My wife and I had a party with like 10 people who everybody got vaccinated. Not vaccinated, everybody got tested and things like that.
There was over 12 people when the gatherings at that point you had to do in secret because no one else could gather 10 or more. People were dying alone because they couldn't visit members in the hospital.
He did all of this while ordering New Yorkers to stay home to stop the spread of COVID-19. The undercover video was posted Thursday. Dr. Varma did not dispute it, but claimed that a quote had been spliced, diced, and taken out of context. Wow, Kevin. Rules for me, but not for me.
Yeah, and we've seen this with so many public officials during the COVID crisis. I think this one is particularly damning in that this was the public health professional in charge of recommending all of these policies. Obviously, you've had politicians, and we talked about Gavin Newsom, we talked about Boris Johnson in the UK, but certainly when you're a public health official charged with protecting the people of the city of New York, which was one of the hardest hit places, to see this is just after the fact is just really awful and troubling.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I remember Dr. Rachel Levine had ordered a similar mandate that New York had in relation to nursing homes where COVID positive patients would have to be taken in, at the same time moving his own grandparents out of the nursing home to get them away from COVID. So there's so many examples. I mean, Gretchen Whitmer's husband was accused of flouting rules related to outdoor activity. Nancy Pelosi with her infamous haircut. It's just, it calls into question all of the conventional wisdom during the first year of the pandemic, because as Steven Crowder says in this video, if you were doing all of these things that you mandated other people weren't allowed to do under the auspice of slowing the spread or saving lives, then did you really believe the science that you told all of us that you were following when you made these regulations?
And it certainly doubles down on the lack of public trust and faith in public institutions, but also public health institutions, which is problematic. Hopefully we will not encounter another pandemic-like event like this in our lifetimes, knock on wood, and beyond our lifetimes. But certainly the lack of trust and the degradation of trust in public officials when they see activities like this. Dr. Varma said in response, "I take responsibility for not using the best judgment at the time." I mean, if that is not the most milquetoast response to these serious accusations, I'm actually very happy to see there's a Democratic City Council member in New York, Robert Holden, who has pressed for an investigation into Dr. Varma in his office as a result of this. I think it deserves bipartisan condemnation. It can't just be one party or the other. It's got to be this united front, calling into question a lot of these decisions and actions.
Agreed, because what we saw in the video that we played was Steven Crowder confronting Varma about the undercover video. The undercover video itself is incredibly damning.
It's even worse than that
right?
interview on the street.
Exactly. He's sitting, it appears to be some kind of date, and he says, I had to be sneaky to get to these. He uses the term sex parties. Like, he's very open about what he was doing. He admits that it would be very embarrassing if this got out because he was in charge of the New York COVID response. He says, quote, we went to some like underground dance party underneath a bank on Wall Street. We were all rolling, we're all taking Molly, and everybody's high. And I was so happy because I hadn't done that in like a year and a half. And at that point, of course, New York was still under this vaccine mandate. I remember going up for work at that time and literally got chased through a bar because I didn't flash my card at the entrance. I mean, it was pretty dark times for the city, and to know that this guy who was crafting the policy was out there living it up like nothing was wrong is very disturbing, and you're exactly right. It reduces trust in institutions, and then you have people like Dr. Fauci say, well, I'm the science, it's dangerous that people don't trust us anymore, and I agree to an extent. We should be able to trust our public health officials, but you can't.
When they do the right thing.
Yeah, when they do the right thing.
And don't become total hypocrites as part of this process. You have had some interesting reads throughout this Friday show in terms of rolling in Molly and our conversations about the Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina. But again, I think it is that problematic element of faith in these institutions, faith in public health, because again, when something like this happens again, more and more people are just going to tune out because they don't believe these individuals. And again, to this really lacking in any kind of response by this Dr. Varma character. I hope this follows him throughout the rest of his career because it's dangerous and lives were lost because of it.
And it's so disturbing, too, how there's been such little accountability in the public health bureaucracy for the mistakes that were made and for some of the outright attempts to censor people who were offering a different perspective on how to handle the pandemic. I mean, with the Great Barrington Declaration being censored through the request of government officials on social media, which was, of course, was the declaration suggesting that the most vulnerable population should be doing lockdowns, whereas the rest of people should be free to move about their daily lives so long as they're taking their individual risk into account. And then we have Andrew Cuomo, right? Just last week, he appears in front of Congress to testify about that nursing home mandate. He was not pushed out of office because of his COVID policies. He was pushed out because of a sexual harassment scandal.
Exactly right.
He goes in front of Congress and he tries to blame Trump for his own nursing home mandate, claims that he never edited the document undercounting the deaths when his fingerprints are all over it, and is apparently exploring coming back into politics. So people are not going to be satisfied, I think, until the architects of the pandemic disaster, and especially the hypocrites who didn't follow their own policies, are held to account and are not allowed anywhere near public office ever again.
Yeah, I think we move on so quickly in our society. We were talking, Robbie and I, the other day about just moving on from the Trump assassination attempt.
Oh my gosh, no one's talking about it. We all had this collective experience with COVID, are past it, and we're just so quickly to move on without, to your point, Amber, the accountability element and learning from our mistakes. Hindsight is always 20/20, right? There are a lot of moving pieces at the time and wanting to protect as many lives as possible, but there's got to be always a proper accounting to restore faith in our institutions. Absolutely. We're going to take a break. We'll be back. More Rising after this.